Alright. These are somewhat dry streams, I guess. The postmortems. Not the most exciting, but people watch the VODs for some reason, so I like to do them. But this one will probably be a little more off the cuff than normal. Because I don't really have as much to say about DLC 5. So kind of getting into it. DLC 5, DLC always starts based on a few original ideas. This is basically copy pasted from old DLCs as well. I haven't even reread this for a while, so should be interesting to kind of remember. But we've deviated a little bit from this first one. This specific DLC. The first point, the teams are responsible for making maps. DLC wouldn't exist without that core idea. That's a pretty important one. The Dust Force community cares a lot about custom maps and new custom maps, so that's what we got. That's what people like to do. I think I'll have some music in the background. Might as well play this music after all. Alright. So obviously that's the main intent. Focus on custom maps. Make sure that people are able to compete or take it casually if they want. You know, you can be whatever skill level, you can be whatever activity level you want. But it's a cool environment. It's probably the staple of Dust Force event at this point. We've definitely overtaken CMRs in terms of popularity and everything else, really. The CMR event format is kind of fallen off since I started to do different kinds of events anyway. It always comes and goes. But it's good to do something like that every now and then. You know, always worth doing another one. Coming from past DLCs, you know, we always learn the same kind of lessons in terms of what people like and what they don't like. We've tried a lot of different things. If you want the more detailed story of DLC, you can look at, say, other postmortems if you really want. The DLC 4 one's pretty thorough. Tells the story of past DLCs. But basically, DLCs have evolved primarily based on how maps have hidden replays. And when that became available, we started to go for less linear kinds of maps, and people went kind of crazy with it. And we've dialed it back since then. This time in particular, I wanted to try to make the maps more straightforward, more linear, maybe a little bit harder. But I also I wanted to build off of DLC 4 compared to other DLCs. So kind of like how DLC 4 was a kind of natural progression from DLC 3. A lot of stuff in DLC 5 just made sense following DLC 4. So there were a lot of main ideas for that. Nice. Great UI. So keys were probably the best thing to come from DLC 4. We just wanted to expand that a little bit. I wanted to tie them to times more predictably. In terms of, I wanted to basically have like little groups, little tiers of how people would score based on how well their runs were. You know, that's not the right way to say it. I thought I was gonna say something else. How well they played. That made more sense. So, think of it like if you get a really good record, you want that to be worth more than, say, just barely getting a record. So if you get a record by a certain amount of time, you're rewarded for the time. So I wanted to kind of mix scoring by time, not just scoring by the placing, because some people don't really respond so well to scoring just by rank. And scoring by time would be potentially interesting. It's something I've wanted to do ever since DLC started, honestly. I don't think I made a system that really capitalize off that in any way. But that ended up not being the point. We ended up having keys be a little bit more similar to DLC 4, just a little expanded, and added the invert keys. So I needed something else that wasn't just the side leaderboards are kind of underwhelming in DLC 4. They're also very underwhelming in DLC 5 for a different reason, and a similar reason for that matter. I think the idea to have achievements, which ended up becoming invert keys, I wanted that to happen from DLC 3, and I really wanted it to happen in DLC 4 with the top players versus the world kind of stuff, but wasn't really able to do it until the invert keys, so I'm glad that worked out. But that was one of the earliest ideas for DLC 5. Like, I knew when DLC 4's going on, alright, DLC 5 we're gonna expand keys a little bit more, we're gonna change them to have more tiers and be a little bit easier to make the keys times for, rather than have to grind them too much before they're released. The rival system, that's something that I knew I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to promote rivalries in terms of having people be motivated to like do things like challenges with other players. I really wanted that to be a big focus of DLC 5 from when DLC 4 was going on. I thought that would be very interesting. It wasn't until a little bit later where I knew I really wanted to go for the 2 teams that change every week, but in terms of DLC format ideas, I knew I was going to do that for a long time. That's just something that I knew I was going to do. That wasn't going to change in any possible way. It was a good way to address, it was a good way to incorporate the rival system, whatever that would end up being. You can have people choose what teams they want to be on every week. different change of pace. It's just something different, everything resets every week. Things don't get stale. That's the point behind it. I wanted to separate individual and team leaderboards because with the rivals, or not with the rivals, with the 2-team structure that resets, I needed to have some points carry over every week. Otherwise, it doesn't really have that kind of appeal, I guess. It would feel very different than old DLCs if you didn't have something that kind of added up every week. But I still wanted them to be separate. I've wanted to separate individual and team scores for a bit. I kind of did that in 4, but not really. Especially because the top players versus the world thing didn't really take off in any way. I already talked about I wanted maps to be a bit different. I did know I wanted to make some maps in advance, and I can have a few high quality maps in addition to the team maps. Maybe the teams would make 1 or 2 maps per week. After all, with only 2 teams, the teams are going to be very big, and they certainly have the map maker capacity on their team, whether experienced or not, in order to make maps. The spy idea, I also knew I could fit that in very early. Whenever I came up with the 2-team ideas, I was like, you know what, this is like the only time I could ever make spies work. So I reached out to Maybetta kind of early on, in terms of this is a DLC format that you might like. But the spy idea was also something that you can just do with your team that's not related to the game. It made a lot of sense with temporary teams. It wouldn't make any sense at all with long-term teams. So, if I don't have temporary teams, why would I bother with anything actually spy related? This is just not a good way to do it. I'm sure I could think of some system if I tried, but usually it wouldn't make sense. Because spies inherently, it's kind of like there's a secret, and that secret only matters if it's a secret, and then after it's no longer a secret, that's it. So, like, there's just this point of time where the spy is on a team, but then they have to do things maybe, and then at some point they're either revealed or they've accomplished a goal, but there's no going back. That's a permanent change. You can't be like, I'm a spy again, by the way. Or I was a spy this whole time, but I wasn't. I was a sleeper agent in the first week, so I couldn't do spy things. That doesn't really make sense. No, kind of funny, but doesn't make sense for a DLC. But with temporary teams, it made sense. So those are the main ideas behind DLC 5. Those are the early ideas. That's what I knew I wanted to do, kind of going into it. Let's change the music because I definitely have one section for every section. Perfect. Alright, so DLC 5, planning goes underway. The perfect music change. We'll see if I have enough sections. Alright. I guess I do. So this is where my my notes get very simplified. Process kind of not really named very well, and there's a big question mark gap in between here and the result. So I started, I came up with those ideas, and I'm just kind of sitting on them for a while. I started to make moves in early August after thinking about the compilation map idea. And this wasn't necessarily Cyber Complex 5 at the time, but I was pretty confident that it was going to turn into CC5. I reached out to a lot of map makers. I kind of went in with the guise of, hey, I'm just trying to see what kind of projects are going on. Like, hey, are you busy working on anything? I wanted this to be a secret. Like, when I say a compilation map, a surprise compilation map, I mean like actually a surprise. And I feel like that obviously paid off. People were not actually expecting CC5 when it came out. And that's a good thing. That was a success. Did it need to be that way? No, but I wanted to keep it a surprise as long as possible in order to allow for that option. If it happened to get leaked, or if we decided we wanted to tease that it's CC5 in advance, or a compilation map in general, like I said, we weren't sold on it being CC5 for maybe a week or two. We were just ready to plan for it either way. But talking to a bunch of people, being like, hey, are you working on anything? Are you you have any projects in the works? You busy? You want to work on something maybe? I got an idea. I got a little idea. I'm trying to, I said before that I was thinking of making some maps in advance for DLC 5, I was wondering if you might be interested in making a DLC 5 map. These maps, yeah, like it's 2 months out. I am hoping to polish them a fair amount. And we'll have a few other people that are working on the maps. So, I'm kind of coy about it at first. See if people are interested. I don't mention DLC until they say they're possibly interested in a project. I don't even say anything about Cyber Complex until they are confirmed they want to make a DLC 5 map. I'm like, oh, okay, you are fine with making a polished map, as I said, and there is, by the way, a 2-month time span until this comes out. Well, I have a different secret, by the way. What would you think of this was actually a compilation map? And then I'm selling them on this compilation map idea. What if, you know what, DLC? Doesn't it make sense that we could just be building up to a compilation map all along? People have been practicing all these levels. We can surprise people. They didn't know that they were all connected. The final week can just be, hey, here's the map. That'd be pretty cool. Everybody's on board. When pitching that, I'm like, we could make this whatever kind of project we want. I include the option of CC5. Basically everyone that I talk to about this is instantly on board. Since we unanimously agreed that it was going to be CC5, we came up with a plan, and we had our time frame. I worked on everything else for DLC, like I got done the spreadsheet early. I did a bunch of other stuff. I had all the DLC stuff planned. Everybody's working on maps. I was able to get that done pretty well in advance. But the consistent kind of thing with events, and relying on a lot of people is not everybody does their stuff in advance, and that leads to some of the biggest challenges in terms of these group projects. It's consistently always what I'm fighting against when I'm trying to do these volunteer kind of things, because it's not like this is anybody's job. We're just making some maps for a hobby. I'm asking a lot of people to make a lot of maps, and even if I give them 2 months, they're not even going to start for a month, a lot of them, which honestly I find pretty disappointing. It leads me to lose motivation and a lot of that kind of stuff too. But there were definitely people that were able to work on stuff in advance, so I was a lot more responsive to those kinds of maps. Hey Twinkie. Yeah, the multiple music from Epon, that wasn't the initial plan. I can describe it a little bit more later, but basically what we wanted to do with music was have like music for the first half and music for the second half. So that's only 2 music, but the second half music, that one can have 2 different versions. One that plays when you're on SS pace and one that plays normally. So I wanted the map from the beginning to be very unique, very special, really encourage the player, like give a lot of good feedback to SS pace, really hype it up as it's going along. There are a lot of little design decisions in the compilation map, CC5, that have that kind of polish that make the map feel more connected in that way. And it'll be nice to show off some of that stuff. But in terms of DLC, well, read cons. Music switch time. Yeah, in terms of DLC, the result, it went pretty well. DLC wasn't it wasn't really special in any specific way this time. I think it was just solid, but it didn't have the same kind of impact as it didn't really capture people's engagement in the same way as previous times, in a few different ways. The system as a whole, I think it was just good. Everything worked as expected. But the only problem was I couldn't really afford the time to really promote things actually going on in DLC. The CC5 maps, I wanted the maps to be done before DLC even started, and we're just working on polish. We're just working on putting the maps together, making everything look good. That obviously didn't happen. There were really only a couple maps that were done before their actual week, and I was actually spending a lot of my time map making, so I couldn't promote everything else going on in DLC, and then I'm not really getting much assistance in terms of handling the team maps. I'm running the spreadsheet. I make it clear to the CC map makers, hey, I'm expecting to be busy in DLC, by the way. I have to run things in DLC, so like let's finish these maps before DLC happens. That kind of stuff's really important to me, but unfortunately, that's not how it goes. So I just had to step in for a lot of maps and kind of work through getting them done, making sure everything approached a level of quality that we could be happy with. So similar to DLC 4, kind of abandoned Top Players versus the World because that wasn't working out. I just kind of abandoned stuff going on in DLC 5. I kind of read the room. There weren't as many people that were active in DLC 5. The participation as a whole was fairly lower than other DLCs. Some top players were, not just top players, but some noteworthy people in the community just, they're not really doing much. They're not really grinding the way that they have before. That technically includes myself. I can't really grind DLC because I'm running it. But wouldn't it be great if, everybody were playing? I didn't even have any time to play that kind of stuff. I was just busy working on the maps that weren't out yet the whole time. In fact, I was so busy working on other people's maps that I was almost unable to touch my map for a long time. Made a prototype of it really early. Couldn't even get back to it until week 3. So that was fairly disappointing because I wanted my map to just be done. But although my map kind of suffered a bit as a result, all the other ones came out better, so better on average, I'd say, that it worked out this way. Keys worked very well. I think that was the real strength of DLC yet again. I think that was probably one of the main things. That and the map quality. Those are the two main things that people connected with this DLC. People kept coming back for some pretty good maps. Everybody is just willing to play some new customs. Invert keys, not many people actually played them, but I felt like they were a really good addition. I just want to make them a little more mainstream, so more people can enjoy them, because I think they're really good fits for DLC. I really want to do a little bit more with what I did with invert keys next time, because they're good. People like achievements. But the problem is I need to convince people that they like achievements for some reason. They're just not interested in doing them themselves. But there's just a lot going on. Some people don't really they don't really know what to expect. DLC does change every time. I do think that this was by far the best DLC system that we've had, but I don't think that it matches the Dust Force community. Like, what I mean by that is, in a more competitive game, in a more active game environment, this kind of thing would have done incredibly well. I think. When people are on board with this kind of stuff, this is just the kind of stuff that people who want to be competitive, they'll really take a hold of. But that's not Dust Force. Dust Force just isn't this kind of community. We're okay with just some good enough maps and some interesting goals. And that's not to say that the people that do get involved don't do what they want to do. They don't have fun or anything like that. It's just that we don't have a big community. We don't have the kind of community that DLC can support. Like these DLC systems, they can support a ton of players. Like it's just not the right kind of mix, you know. So I really need to adjust DLC in the future. I just can't run it the same way anymore. To an extent, it's kind of like I need to give up on competition in DLC. In some ways, I just don't think the Dust Wars community is willing to back it up long term. It's gonna be a little different, maybe. I think DLC is still worth continuing, but like everything was so predictable this time around. Like I knew exactly how it was gonna go. You know, once I knew I was forced to spend my time working on maps instead of other things, I know how it's gonna go. I really wasn't surprised by anything, and in some ways that made DLC 5 a little bit boring for me, because I'm just like, this is just happening again. Like I wish I had help. So DLC 5, kind of disappointing. It makes me wish that it could be better, but you know, it is what it is. Could spy stuff have made it more interesting? Yeah. It wouldn't have been enough on its own, but it'd be something to make the teams feel more connected in a longer term way. Like longer term, like you know, something to do together as a team. Because like we have all the DLC stuff that people are clearly not all doing. Like, they're not doing all of it, is what I mean. And not everyone. The people that are involved in DLC do like they were exactly the same in terms of how they acted. Not like the same people or the same stuff like that. It was just like I said, it was all expected. We didn't have any teams that suffered from just being like, we're losing, time to give up for the rest of DLC. We didn't have any of that. We handled that pretty well. But like people didn't really they didn't take a hold of the rivals system. If I could have assigned challenges and rivalries more, I think people would have been more in favor of it. But I'm just too busy doing other stuff. And whenever I encouraged people to do it and I didn't force them into it, they wouldn't do it. Like, they just wouldn't do it. I dropped so many hints. I'm like, yeah, you should challenge this person. And then they don't challenge this person. I was successful in plenty of them, but far less successful than actually successful. If more people are around, like Maybetta and Camel have helped me in the past with some DLC stuff, you know, if they were able to do more of that this time around, things could have been different, but it's not just on them. I certainly don't mean to put anyone on blast. Because, you know, it's just volunteering, and people are clear about they're unable to do things in advance. I try to be clear about what I'm expecting of people, and try to get very clear answers about their responsibilities. But there are just some things that continue to not happen. Like personally, I'm pretty disappointed that the Dust Kid feed still doesn't show the replays on the main page. That's a pretty big thing. I mean, why are all these people playing these maps? I wonder what's going on. Wow, people are really playing this map this week. Maybe I'll play it too. What a big missed opportunity. I can't believe Dust Kid is still like that. So in some ways, you know, that's kind of where some of the disappointment comes from. Like I'm just not getting enough support. Because I do really think that in a bigger, more active community, DLC would really take off. Like it is our main event at this point, but it could just be so much cooler. Alright, well, that's basically the summary of how things went down. You know, like I said, that's fairly abridged this time around. I'm not spending too long on DLC kind of stuff, but I do want to give one last reminder to fill out the form. Smiley face. I'm gonna read the comments from this form next. Just give me a moment. Switch the music again. Not SS version music. Alright, let me see this this map pool. What we got? We have 18 responses. If any of you guys want your comments responded to, or want to ask questions or anything like that, it's a good opportunity. I'm going to be going through the map pool. We'll look at some of those results. Alright, so some things to keep in mind when considering poll results and data like this. This is only 18 responses, which honestly isn't that bad. Like, not all of our polls get a ton of responses. This was kind of in the middle for total responses, I'm pretty sure. We actually got a lot more responses for other DLCs, like up to double as many. The final poll doesn't usually get a lot though. Like, more than 20 is kind of... well, it's good, but we don't always see that, I think. So obviously with a small sample size, you know, it just depends on who filled it out. Some things are going to be a little overrepresented than others. And some people are also very clearly biased. There are some very funny people that like to put ones for every map but the map that their team put, for example. And that tends to skew results, so I don't take the results that seriously, and neither should you. That's my forward. Alright, so favorite team rivalry. We had a little bit more love for week 1's routing versus execution. Team V ceilings and spike jumps also had some interest, but it is interesting that a favorite team that's primarily made of team routing and team V ceilings, and it might have to do with possible overlap between those teams as well. Obviously there are some people that were on both teams. but that's just kind of, this is just kind of the data that we got. 3 people had no team as a preference. Only 1 person liked being on the world team. Too bad for the worlds. USA not doing much better though. Favorite week aesthetic? Week 4 actually had that by a lot. That's cool. I contributed to 3 of these a lot more than week 1. Week 1's aesthetic was made by Big Diesel. I didn't see too many changes from the beginning. Week 2, for me, this was kind of between weeks 2 and 4. Because I liked having something to put that texture script on in a unique way. That's something that Simon and I were talking about for a bit. For both weeks 2 and 3, we actually didn't have a strong idea going into them. I mean, honestly, the only week that had an aesthetic idea in mind was week 4, like really early. Week 1 had an idea kind of early-ish. And all of the aesthetics had like a base idea, like relating to how the level was supposed to flow, and there'd be something that kind of flowed in the level with the player. That was something that was important to CC5 as a whole from the start. So that's why the particle effects work the way they do in CC5, which obviously if you haven't been playing the level of particles, then maybe turn them on, because that's one of the reasons why we required a dust mod update, by the way. The API opened up emitter information. But yeah, week 4 is pretty cool. That's not actually originally what week 4 was supposed to be like, but I might show that off a little later. Favorite team map? We had some .execute fans. Routing Factory. People like the week 1 maps, and then week 2, and then the other 2 weeks were tied. I could kind of feel that as well. People were getting a little tired of the map making from teams. Pretty much it felt like the same people were making the maps. It was hard for me to get anyone new to make maps this time. But that's because I was trying to hand this off to other people, and that wasn't going very well. Favorite team map gameplay? .execute in the lead. Equilove. World Recce. Also interesting that, so although these bars, you know, they go to the far right, if you look at the percentage and number of votes, keep in mind that for every single one of these poll questions, there are a lot of split answers. For most of these, you can pick 3 options, and people are picking very different options from each other. So that's something also very important relating to DLC. There are no clear favorites. That can mean everything's, you know, reasonably similar quality in a good way. But it also shows that people have different tastes, and DLC appeals to a lot of different people. People have different preferences, like Routing Factory and .execute. Both 2 different, you know, one's from Team Routing, one's from Team Execution. 2 different kinds of maps are the favorites. So something to keep in mind. These are very rarely majorities, like, you know, only 42%. You know, 6 out of 14 people were like, this is my favorite map.
good to keep in mind. You know, just because it's the most voted doesn't mean everyone actually liked it as well. Yeah, gameplay. You know, every map got at least one response. Every map was somebody's favorite in some way for the team maps. So good to see. Maybe some people are biased. I don't know. Some people did make some of these maps, after all. Favorite side leaderboard. Side leaderboards were, you know, kind of abandoned. But partially, I think that's because the side leaderboards felt a little less inspired than invert keys. Some of them were just kind of tacked on. Some of them were just interesting, unique. Infinite air charges, any percent, and Minecraft, any percent were some kind of funny ones. Low direction, any percent, interesting. Low dash, SS. Favorite invert key? Not many responses to this question. Well, I mean, we had a similar number of responses, but only 4 on the favorites, and Rope Dart with a surprising lead here. Big Rope Dart fans, all coming in for 4 out of 14. Kill 20 apples. How many people even did this? But people like different things. I mean, we got a lot of different votes. No big favorites, unfortunately. But I think a lot of them were really solid. Some of them, you know, there's just so many, it's hard to say the really simple ones are a favorite, like Equilove any percent. It's just like, you know, simple, easy, not complicated. Some people like that, but you know, it's not like a standout kind of one in some ways. But good info for the future. People like all the week 4 ones actually. All the week 4 ones got some votes. No Pogo SS fans, although people loved it a lot in the recap. I think it's still worth having some of these, even if it's not someone's favorite. We have some CC5 votes. Favorite CC5 map goes to Arb. This one had 12 out of 17. Good response for that one. Very good because I was particularly strict with working on Arb's map. Arb knows that his map got some of the most attention because I was like, yours is gonna be first. You know, people are gonna play this one the most. We care about this one the most. So I think it's a good thing that people also liked it the most. Personally, I liked all the ones that were the like main map of the week more than the other ones, because those are the ones that I worked the most on. Like I worked very closely with Arb and Simon and Epon with their maps, especially. And I helped out on all the other ones too, really. Best gameplay, similarly going to Arb, but Epon and my maps seem to be the next favored ones. Pipe Wrench and Nazara also getting some love. Other ones kind of filler in some ways. Best aesthetic, People did like the week 4 aesthetic. I kind of split their votes here. um, yeah, Arbs map, week 2. Week 2 got more votes on maps here than was shown at the beginning of this feedback poll. There were a lot of week 1 votes for favorite map, but not like favorite aesthetic, I guess. But maybe think people were responding to it like how to use it, perhaps. Yeah, people like the challenging maps a lot of the time. It's like Stockholm syndrome. People like it when they have to put in effort into it. Favorite segment? When you combine my 2 maps, they reach their full power, I guess. I split all my votes until I could tie Arb. That's pretty neat. This was always intended to be the same map, so. Same with Temp's map, those are always intended to be one map. Uki's 2 maps were, not as connected necessarily, and neither were Alex's. They knew theirs were going to be connected, but they weren't made like together, but Services Commons and Reclamation Layer, Camel was always planning for them to connect the way that they did, and Temp's map, we had to split that in half, just like my map. And Epon's map ended up being the focused map of the week, which I think ended up working out for the better. Temp ended up busy and sick for a fair amount during that 2-month period. Hardest segment goes to Simon's level, understandably. Originally I was expecting Temp's map to become the hardest map, but his didn't really get any harder and Simon's kept getting a little harder. So predictably ended up being Simon's, and then I think Pipe Wrench is probably next. That gets a vote. Arb's map gets a vote. Epon's map gets a vote. I don't know about that one, but I think hardest segment's pretty easy question. Favorite music, also pretty split. They're all really good. Got some week 4 love. Week 4 also has a few different versions of the music. What we're listening to right now is the kind of casual, you're not on SS pace music. This also plays in the Nexus, which related to the Nexus, if any of you guys have updated, there's another update coming out in the near future. It's already on dev that fixes some Nexus script issues, so look for a dust mod update in the near future for stable stuff. Just waiting on it to be pushed, but it's on dev, so if you want a working Nexus, go update to the dev version. And we got some comments. Alright. Cyber Complex 5 comments. I should go in a voice chat, because I said I would. I'm going in general. Alright. CC5 comments. Pretty good response there. Very amazing. So much effort went into all the little stuffs, both visuals and gameplay wise, which can barely be noticed individually, but all adds up. It makes a great overall experience. Thanks. really like the stage transitions between different art styles. Very cool. Uh, we spent a lot of time on the transitions. That was something that I cared a lot about. It was a particularly challenging kind of thing. Very cool in the way it was slowly introduced piece by piece weekly, made it super approachable for actually doing attempts. This was a big point for having it be a compilation map in the first place. So yeah, that's what we were doing. Yeah, simply delightful everything. Thanks. Fun surprise. Still don't play long maps. Well, cool, but surprise. We've tricked you into playing a long map by playing DLC 5. So, who really won in the end? Who really played the long map? Might as well play it. Am I right?
It was all a clever ruse.
Yep, we tricked them. A bit too long for my taste, and the difficulty's inconsistent, but good map. I actually think this is an interesting one. The difficulty in CC5. That's something that is a little complicated, but I think there's a good way to summarize it. Basically, so much of DLC 5's map design was like this consistent linear, cyber complex style of gameplay that, in retrospect, what I was describing earlier about map design for the DLC 5 maps, it all makes a lot of sense when you look at it again. You're like, yeah, all that stuff that I was saying about maps being a little more linear, just better kind of quality, the kind of style of gameplay. Everybody was on the same page, making these kinds of maps for the most part. But the parts that the difficulty stands out in like Simon's map and Pipe Wrench and the checkpoint in Coggers, for instance. Those sections are all like, those are the only sections where you kind of have to figure it out. You can't just first try SS it necessarily. And some people can first try SS it, the ones with experience. But like, those are just the only hard-ish parts. They're not like that crazy hard, but they stand out because they're the only ones that you actually have to practice a little bit more.
Yeah, and they definitely were the parts of the map, at least from people streaming it.
Yeah.
Where people mostly died, or otherwise flubbed in some way. So.
I think the pacing of difficulty as a whole in the map wasn't like a downside. I think the difficulty we arrived at was pretty nice. Like, even the hardest things weren't too difficult. You just have to be willing to practice. But the problem is, you're so used to not needing to practice specific hard things, and also you've already played some of the maps for a week. So it kind of conflicts a little bit in those parts. But interesting topic, the difficulty in the map. We have a good map comment, thanks. Really cool, just sad that I failed. There are only a few people that applies to, but good luck. Hopefully still grinding.
Yep, never too late for it. Well, maybe too late for DLC 5, but never too late for the SS overall.
Yep, it's there. You can just play it. Cyber Complex 5 is amazing. Its gameplay and art are some of my favorite. It has definitely become a map I'd use to show off the power of this game's community. The unique effects, the multiple tracks for songs, all of it was awesome. The surprise was pretty amazing too. This guy gets CC5.
The good map comment was apparently cows. Thank you, cow.
All right. If anyone in chat has their own comments or questions, or wants to expand on some of these comments, feel free. Those are all the good ones. It's time for the Those are all the feel-good kind of comments. It's time for the real feedback. More DLC related, but starting with the maps. I'm not going to ask for harder maps, because people are way too good at coming up with things like cloggers. Alright, well this is an interesting thing, because this person is not asking for something. But maybe they're trying to signal that they do actually want them. Or maybe not, and it's hard enough.
So what they
Slightly
mean is
confusing.
every map should have a clunk counterpart.
Maybe. Difficulty-wise, I think DLC currently strikes a good enough balance. Though some of the key times seemed very tight for lower tier players. Not sure how to best handle that though. Key time difficulty honestly felt pretty good this time around. In some ways, it felt a little too consistent. I kind of wish I had the stats. I wasn't able to make some stats, but I'll get the spreadsheet up and we'll look at some of the stats for fun.
Yeah, so I heard the distribution for these were pretty even from what I remember.
Yeah. I'll just look at the summary pages.
Yeah.
What is the best way to look at
Probably by
this?
levels.
So every now and then there's one that people just stands out because it's harder or something. But basically, although there were more tiers because of the tiers within tiers, it felt like there were fewer tiers that kind of mattered. Like, red matters and gold matters. Silver is like a good kind of gold to have, but it was like you get it with some amount of difficulty or not at a low level of play. But you kind of just try to go for things within the tier that you want to be in. People didn't care if it was like gold 2 or gold 3. They're just like, I want gold. Yeah, like what Cow said. I'll just get my keys and stop there. That's the point of keys. That's kind of what I want to happen. I don't want people to grind too hard, but I want to give them goals. And I want to give them like, all right, you can get a 23. You know what? Maybe I can get a 22.5. There's just another tier right after that. So in that way, I think the key tiers were a success. Reds were a little bit gatekeepy in a sense because they're just hard. And they're made to be hard. You have to really put in an effort to get the red keys. But some of them are easier than others. Like some of them just have that easy kind of strat or grind to them. And that's kind of what people were hoping for most of the time. That's where most of the red keys ended up coming from. So, in that way, the reds are almost prohibitively hard unless there was strat development that made it easier. But that's kind of where red keys were supposed to sit. They were supposed to be that hard. And there weren't really that many unexpected strats. And even the ones that were unexpected, they didn't even approach the limit that I put on the keys, which was I did not want red 5 to be possible, or not possible, but I didn't want there to be any red 5s. I wanted all the world records to be in the red 2 to red 4 range. Like it didn't really matter where they sit, but like there were only a few that actually didn't reach red 2. But 100% I think they could have. And also there were only a few that even reached red 4. So I do want to change them a little bit, and I think that the key difficulty mattered a little bit more for invert keys as well. Because like that's just the kind of thing that some of them were just strictly harder execution wise than others. So those are much more surprise it's gate kept because of difficulty. So yeah, I'm also not exactly sure what I want to do about it, but it is a problem that I'm aware of. Really liked how most of the maps are not too restrictive in gameplay. Impressive that the perfect balance was found. Maps not being restrictive in gameplay, that's a pretty big point for DLC. And I think the maps in CC5 especially showed that you can do a linear style of maps and do well in DLC when people focus on the optimization part more than necessarily just a complicated route. Like, there are a lot of little puzzles when it comes to optimization. Like, how do I solve this little room? Most camel levels in DLC tend to be more routing heavy and more puzzly for that kind of stuff. But for the most part, whenever there are maps like that, people tend to not favor them. Like, or when they go too hard on that is what I mean to say. And this is a difference from past DLCs where we've kind of flipped around. The camel levels in the past in DLC, those ended up being the most favored because of that kind of style, and the other maps were either too open-ended or too, like, what's another good word for it? They didn't really have that kind of charm. They didn't really have that kind of problem solving that you had to do in camel levels. But this time around, camel's levels had a little too much of that. And the other levels were just, they were just simpler. They were just more approachable. So I think, I do think we found a good balance for that kind of stuff because of how the maps were designed this time around. But I do find people's taste in map design, the evolution of DLC map design, very interesting. And I do like the direction it's going in. I like the idea of pre-made mixed with one team map per week. I think this would work well with 4 teams and 2 pre-mades a week. That would cut out the heavy map burden that can be placed on some player map maker, while still giving us a large number of maps per week. This is a little confusing, I'll say. There are a few things this might refer to, so clarification might help a little if whoever wrote this is in chat, I guess. But basically there are a few ways to interpret this, and a few responses to those that I have anyway. So first, if we assume you mean 1 map per team per week with 4 teams, and having a total of 6 maps, that would satisfy the large number of maps per week. But actually, that is a very big burden on map making. Some of you may or may not have noticed behind the scenes how much of a map making burden there is. It's a stretch. People were clearly they're clearly kind of tapped out even on teams. Like, I already made a map for DLC. I don't really want to make another map. Sure, I'm not asking for much, but we only had a few people making maps total on teams, and we had big teams. People aren't actually making these maps. Like that is a big burden for me to put on people. And that's actually an even bigger burden on the pre-made maps. When I said I worked the most on like Arb's map, Simon's map, Epon's map per week, and obviously my own, I think I can only comfortably do one pre-made map a week in a normal DLC. Like doing 2 is actually asking a lot for map makers to make maps in advance. I'm really impressed that I was able to get this many people and maps out of this DLC. And I think I did only do it because of CC5. But it was a stretch. I don't think I can really count on 2 pre-made maps a week. You know how people don't make maps for CMR? I'm asking for higher quality maps than that at this point. And I'm not really even asking for that, but it's hard to get people to make maps in advance for any events. If this referred to 1 team map per week, and you know there are 4 teams, so we have 3 maps per week, and every team just kind of takes a break every week, I think that's more, you know, that cuts out the heavy map burden, but also that's not a large number of maps per week, so that's why this was kind of a funny thing to read, I guess. Maps are really, really good. Thanks. This is the cow response.
I mean, Cow is saying that might have been him again.
Yeah. They're not lined up, but I could look at the individual responses. Maps are good. Harder maps always good. Strat / routing variety felt fine without being overwhelming, so I think it was in a pretty nice spot this time around. Good. Alright, I really liked maps this time around. Partially read the ending of this one. I really liked the maps this time, way more than DLC 4. I think a good mix of linearity, like we had this time, with a few open routing maps would be a nice combination. Although it can be hard to route, stuff like Routing Factory was nice since it allowed for people to route out stuff. Yeah, those maps are cool. I do somewhat agree, but like I had said earlier with talking about camel maps, I somewhat disagree because most people don't really like the very open maps. That's just the way that it tends to be in DLC, but we are always going to have a little bit of them. This one in particular, it was a very clear effort was made to make Cyber Complex 5, which is a very linear map.
Not too much room
so
for open maps in that one.
yeah, I had to be like, hey, just so you know, we have to be very careful about super routing this time around. You guys might want to make a map in a circle for DLC, but believe me, we want linear maps. Like, I want cyber complex maps. I don't want DLC maps. That's just repeated over and over. That's the consistent feedback that I'm giving to the people making the CC5 maps. I'm like, don't think about it as a DLC map. Like, I don't want it this open. I don't want people's first experience of CC5 to be like, where do I go? That's a pretty big problem to me. There are honestly a couple places in the map that are a bit too open for my preference. Like that part in Electro Tangle stands out to me. But we tried some different stuff in each of the maps. Found the open
Yeah, so I
replay
mean-
maps to be confusing. Just kept forgetting which maps allowed replays and which didn't. Yeah, I put that in a couple spots, but I know people don't read that stuff. Not everybody does. It's a little disappointing. There are only so many places I can put it that maps either have or don't have replays. So I don't know how to make it less confusing. You just got to know where to look, and that's I do make announcements and I do put it in the same consistent spot every week, in multiple spots. But even if I make sure, like I could DM everybody in DLC and tell them where to find information and what's going on, and it wouldn't be enough. So. But some people like that, some people didn't. Let's see what else we got. I liked invert keys having varied gameplays instead of being straight up difficult. I agree. Some were easy, some were hard. I liked that they had a lot of variety as well. The Alice description is where you look? Alright, well. That's... Some people don't look at that. So, well, we didn't always put some information in the Atlas descriptions, because usually I hear that people don't even read those.
Yeah, I would feel like that would be the last place people would
Yeah.
look, but
It's also, it's a lot for me to ask. I ask people to do a lot of stuff when uploading all these maps. Some people put stuff in their description, some don't. What else? Keys are perfect. Team idea was quiet and genius, as it puts people into teams where they immediately have something in common. True. True. Very good idea, I guess. That was definitely one of the points. The teams do immediately have some synergy because in a perfect world, people, they say something in team selection. They are actively opting into these teams. They had to say something to even join the team. That's kind of a big deal. And then if they continue to participate or not, it's on them. I like the half-hidden aspect. It was kind of fun to see other strats, as well as having independent strats shared in the jinkiest way. So I knew from the start that I wanted some replays to be visible, some to be hidden. Because having everything hidden, although it's cool, that's not very normal. And I really want DLC to be something that people are comfortable streaming. Like that's a huge missed opportunity every time for DLC. People don't stream it. Cyber Complex 5, I know that map's not gonna have hidden replays at all. Because why would I hide CC5 replays? All the levels are already out. And I really want people to stream CC5. The idea to hide replays, or the idea to unhide some replays, that was from before I knew I was gonna do CC5, but I knew once I thought of a compilation map that one was gonna be visible replays. But like I said, some people like it, some people don't. Some people they just want to copy other people's strats. This time around, I couldn't predict who would be on which team. people joined the teams during the week, which presented a challenge for the replay script because I don't know who is going to be on which team. So I can't just be like, I can watch all of Arb's replays and not Fishy's replays for any particular player, really. So that's a little awkward. So I had to make it so you could only watch your own replays for one. But there are only 2 teams. Like, what are you really missing out on? If like half of DLC that's playing the level, like half of the players can all collaborate and share their strats, you're probably gonna come up with the same route. We might as well just unhide some replays. Force the level name to be that. Not a bad idea, I guess. I don't know if people would be willing to name their levels that, but I guess if people are okay with it, they'd be fine. That could make it more obvious. I don't know if I'd call it necessary, but it's worth thinking about having it in the map title. Some people just don't like titling their maps that, maybe. That's what I would immediately guess. Some people like making overly long map names too.
Yeah.
And that makes it harder for the spreadsheet to look good. I think.
Use it at the 26 character limit.
Yeah, your chronostatic arbor redux. I had to double check and be like, is that too long?
I did check that. I will.
Yeah, after you sent it, I was like,
Yeah, no, that's fair, but I did check that.
Yeah. Well, I think for DLC 6, you should include Dust for 6. You should add Dust Kid, yes. You should add Dust Kid. Maybe one day DLC will support Dust Kid better. Maybe. It'd be nice. But a lot of people also don't play Dust Kid, so it's worse to force people into Dust Kid.
Yeah, I think it's generally a function of like the maps that people typically like to play are just not suited for Dust Kid in general, right? So it's kind of a function of how people play the game. That Dust Kid is not like the best suited for the maps. But it is unfortunate either way that Kid is very low presence in DLC.
I mean, I think it's we really just have such a man-girl bias in terms of map making when it comes to levels. People primarily just test with man-girl.
I am 100% guilty of that.
Yeah. And I knew we were getting into that anyway, and I know DLC maps are going to be like that, and I can't fully prevent it. But I can say with confidence that DLC 5 had far more attention to Dust Kid than any DLC before it.
Yeah, like the maps actually were. So I know I joked a bit about Kid testing being somewhat limited, but they actually were rather rigorously checked for Kid stability.
Yeah, I played all the levels as Kid. I obviously also tested the most as man because I need to understand the level. But for every single map, I'm playing it as Kid, and I'm like, what if people do this instead? What if people do something else instead? I am actively trying to mess around in the map. Obviously some parts are harder than others, but I never felt like that CC5 was bad for Dust Kid anywhere. It's totally fine. The only big comment that I had on CC5 was kids down heavies. There are like 3 down heavies that are more awkward than others.
Yeah, yeah. I actually
like
remember the
Temps
one.
map,
Yeah.
Coggers, there's like one in Pipe Wrench as well.
Hmm.
But those are the only spots that I had an issue with for Dust Kid.
I
That
actually
never
remember
got
the one.
addressed.
There was one that was addressed in Prismism. That was legit like a pixel too low for Duskins down heavy to hit out of a dash or something.
Oh
And it
yeah,
was
that
fixed,
was
but
fixed.
it was yeah, but it was rather funny. Like on my first playthrough there, when I was playing this kid, I was like, wait, why doesn't that hit? That's a little unfortunate. But
Yeah. Compared to like the one at the end of Iliad, where
yeah,
it's made so that Dust Kid can do a heavy on
yeah,
both of those.
that was pleasantly surprising. I was like, wow, she could actually hit this.
Yeah. It was funny to make sure that everything's still lined up for Kid. But yeah, making it just for Kid does make it worse for the other characters, as you said, Issa. It doesn't really go both ways. You really just have to make it for man girl, and then make sure it's okay for Dust Kid, and then people will enjoy the map. If you make it for Kid first, people aren't gonna like it. It's gonna feel weird. Separate key times for Dust Kid, too much effort for me. I didn't even have enough time to work on team maps at all.
Yeah, I was about to say that could, in theory, be done. In practice, not really.
Yeah, if I get more help, I will have more stuff going on in DLC, but I am 100% for having character leaderboards again. It's something that I've tried to encourage every time. Like, hey, your level, you can have a character for your level. Like, if you want to have a Kid SS, you can. You want this to be worth SS? You want this to require Vangirl? I say that all the time to team maps when I can. And for like invert keys. DLC 6, I'll probably revisit that more if I had to guess, because it's been a while. You know, maybe
I mean, I think that was
yeah, maybe DLC 2 is on the horizon.
yeah. I was about to say. I think that was part of what made DLC 2 feel so special, because
Yeah.
it was, you know, everyone like people had to play all 4 characters within the team, right? So there was an interesting interplay there. And then you had the funny situation of like either man or girl, usually girl, being like significantly less optimized than the other character.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'd like to do something like that again.
Mhm.
Where was I on the feedback? Updated key system improved on a system that was already very good. Side leaderboards felt rather easy to forget about, especially compared to inverts and apples. Team spirit, for lack of a better word, felt stunted by the weekly team shuffling. Regarding the so we already talked about side leaderboards and inverts. Apples are kind of included with things easy to forget. I would say. Regarding the team spirit, perhaps, I don't entirely agree with this. I wouldn't attribute it specifically to team shuffling, as said here. The main reason why is because there are a lot of different systems at work. And from my point of view, as a neutral party, able to see both channels, and able to see all past DLC team channels, I don't think that the teams really
I don't think they're crazy different than any other DLC, really. We had fewer people. We had some people that were more active on teams than others, regardless of what team they were on, and they were just consistently the way that they were. Sometimes they would be less active in certain weeks, but when you have the same team, and you know what group of players you already have, for the entire league, that is obviously different. But we have a whole week. I would also say that pacing played a big factor as well. The way that teams were shuffled was awkward. It didn't feel paced well. It was at an awkward time, and it immediately just transitioned over. I didn't really like how that worked. That was one of the reasons that break week happened, was because I didn't like the pacing of the team change, and that also was a reason why I did the week 4 switch up, because I didn't like the normal pacing change. So I think there's a better way I could have done the switching. I think a schedule more like what week 4 did would have been more appropriate. And if we weren't doing CC5, that is what the schedule would have been like. Because CC5 is the reason for having 4 weeks instead of 3 weeks this time around. It was just kind of up in the air how I wanted to handle it. But I would say that the people on the team really make the team more than anything else. You see it in other DLCs where you're like, I'm signing up with my friends. Alright, well, we already know that this group is going to be pretty talkative amongst themselves. Guess what? That's actually the only people on that team that are doing stuff, usually. And then the teams that are the most active and most competitive are the ones that keep it going. Now, because there's only 1 week, you won't keep it going as much as you'd have to be willing to take this opportunity for a shorter amount of time and kind of buy into the team rivalry aspect. So I would say that when the teams didn't buy into their team identity, and if they were lacking some of the more talkative people, that's when the teams didn't really mesh as well. Being on a different team compared to people you're usually on the same team with, that's very different. If you've been on the same team as other people in past DLCs, it's different. I think this is way better than how, like, if you weren't on one of those teams that I was describing, you just give up after week 1. Like, you already know what's gonna happen. There are only so many people that really get that involved in DLC, and once you see what your team's like, and no one's really doing anything, being stuck on that team just it lets people kind of spiral away from DLC, and they're just kind of like, for the few people that have been on a team and have felt like they for the people that have been on the active teams and like with those groups of people, for any of those people that like don't really mesh well with certain other people, I guess, I feel like the teams this time around handled that a lot better. At least, like maybe a few people were on teams that didn't work out as well as the best teams from the past, but like we didn't have any entire teams just kind of dip out of DLC. Huge benefit there. People just kept playing.
Seeing the team fall off in DLC 4 was definitely it wasn't good to see. To put it one way. So.
And that happens every DLC too. Like every single one. There are always people that dip out over time. We had the smallest amount of that by far this time. And just judging by activity in the teams, channels, you know, like how much people were engaged playing the maps and stuff, seemed totally normal to me. So I wouldn't say I exactly agree with that, but I would say that the feeling is valid. Obviously, like your feelings are valid. You know, you're fine to feel that way. But I wouldn't attribute it just to team shuffling. I think there is a lot more going on here. That said, I don't expect to do team changing again. Main reason why is because I like to do something different every DLC. And this was this is what we were doing this DLC. That was the idea from the start. If I didn't have that idea, I don't know what I would have done. We'll see next time. But that was the idea. And everything was built around that structure. You know, everything just complements that system. And that's why everything worked the way that it did. Isa's message. Start with 5 teams, then dissolve the teams with smaller amounts of messages. I remember, so that reminds me of another comment that I was also thinking of. Another point related to changing teams. Like, if you had the ability to change teams during a DLC, everybody would just kind of go into the same teams in the end. And what would be left with is something basically like either DLC 5 or everyone's on the same team. And you know, if you had the ability to just choose your team members, you'd just always be doing the same thing. And I don't want people to always do the same thing. I need to make them mix it up. But I have really wanted to do things related to elimination and all that.
Kind of like Survivor.
Yeah, I've thrown around the Survivor idea a bit, where it would be funny to have a DLC kind of like Survivor. I don't expect 6 to be like that, but I think it'd be funny.
Every Sunday is the tribal council.
Yeah, I want people to vote out people on their teams. I think it'd be hilarious. I don't think it would go well with our crowd, but if we had a really small DLC, it could be good.
Yeah, I think it could be played off pretty well. So
maybe
something worth trying, perhaps.
Invert keys were a lot of fun. The difficulty of red gold keys seemed fair. I was confused for a while, thinking that gold 3 meant 3 gold keys, but that made sense by like we've 3, I think. Haha. The reason it didn't make sense earlier was that I had much less focus on the keys this time around than DLC 4. I'm not sure whether that is because I spent less time, or because my teams pretty much took care of the keys already, or because I mainly focused on inverts. I'm gonna guess this one's cow also.
Yep, it was cow.
Nice. Yeah, kind of, you're not the only one that was thinking, the number meant the amount of keys. So, something to think about for me. I was thinking of calling them like gold A, B, C, or stuff like that. Which direction do I count in? You know. No one had any strong opinions, and this is what made sense to me. So it's just what I went with. I feel like Isa's editing responses, or has edited responses recently.
I don't remember seeing any long comments.
Oh.
Because I checked this yesterday. But maybe it's not Issa. Just my guess. Alright, I liked everything about the scoring, but having set teams again would help in engagement, I think. It was difficult to really feel at home with a team because it takes place a week to say hi to people, and I'm already in the next team. And it takes a week to say hi? I get the idea though, yeah. Just talked about it. Big part of the previous DLCs to me was growing closer to the people and the teams over the weeks. Here that was fully removed and I missed it. Even just the team selection process at the start of DLC was a very fun bit, IMO. I really like the drafts about... Oh, I forgot to hit send. You're fine. The drafts are something that I really want to make a show out of whenever we do stuff like that. I really like, you know, making it feel special.
Admin. It can certainly serve to help build hype up as well. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, these, you know.
We had very good word of mouth for the last couple of DLCs. For relating to that team idea still, I mean, I agree that it's not a long period of time, but like, don't we already know just about everybody in the community? There were no like, there are no huge standouts this time around that I can think of. There wasn't really any surprises for people like stepping up out of nowhere. Like, sure, not everybody knows everybody, but like, we didn't really have new players this time around. The only people that were on teams were people that decided they wanted to be on teams. You don't know anybody, you're in the Discord. Yeah, Idol would be a surprise if you haven't paid attention to her. You know, Bama, you were a captain last time. A team rep. They weren't captains last time. Only comment I'd have about the scoring is that perhaps one could meet in the middle of competing for team key times and competing for better ranks, as it feels much less involved nowadays. You just grind for your key time, and whether you get 15th or 10th doesn't matter. So you don't really care what anyone else gets. That is kind of the point of keys. I'm trying to dissuade people from grinding specifically for those ranks in like 10th, 15th. I'm intentionally making them not worth many points because the focus is supposed to be rivalries and all that. Which, as you get into next, rivalries and challenges help, but those are effort to set up, generally not used by much people, and feel horrible when you take one and lose, and effectively cause your team to lose a given week. I think regarding rivalries and stuff like that, part of the reason why it was abandoned was because I obviously didn't have enough time to promote them and actually assign people to them. And people just weren't, you know, they weren't taking the hints. You know, people were very concerned with losing. And, well, if you're the only rivalry in a DLC that is themed about rivalries, it's a little bit disappointing. And we can have different rivalries every week. Every week is just a throwaway week. Who cares if you win or lose one week? Like, who really cares? It's just a week. Like, when are you gonna do anything else at all related to this? Just do it. That's what I tell people. Like, who cares if you win or lose? Just have fun with it. But people don't want to do that. You know, every single DLC, people don't want to do these kinds of challenges. We don't have a competitive community. We just don't. People don't want to compete in that kind of manner. this was kind of one of my final attempts at doing something that I really promote. Like this is the format for this kind of competition. But people don't care. There are a few people that are willing to try it out a little bit, but there's not really anyone that is pushing it. Like Fishy doesn't have anyone to really contest him. In terms of like people that can be on the same kind of level, but then people also aren't willing to give it a chance. Like, who cares if you lose to Fishy once? Like, I got Arb to challenge Fishy on his own map because there's a chance it's just 1 week. And we had a bunch of other challenges and rivalries that Cal losing to Fishy was one of the best challenges. All right. Some people are concerned about if they're gonna lose though. They're concerned about if it's gonna be fair. Like it took quite a lot of effort to get Rodent and Issa to actually challenge each other. I was bugging Rodent about that so much in one of the voice channels. I was like, "Hey, you wanna challenge Issa?" But this was the DLC where it didn't matter if you found fair matchups. Just try it out. If there are enough of them and people are okay with this kind of chaotic system where anybody could win it or lose it for the team. This is where points are coming from. In retrospect, I should have not had any points at all in anything but rivalries. I could have done that. I'm really thinking that's what I should have done instead, because there's no other way people would have competed in this kind of DLC. But like I gave just a tiny amount of points to the leaderboards, and I gave a little bit of points to the keys. And guess what? That's where 90% of the points came from. That's a pretty big embarrassment. Like when I saw that, I was just like, I don't know what to do about this community anymore in terms of competition. People just don't want it. Like I'm not even that competitive of a person, and I'm one of the best people in the world at Dustforce. That should have given me a hint, honestly. But yeah, people didn't care about points. Like they would look at the results, like at the end of the week and stuff, and during the week occasionally. But they were motivated to get their keys related to it, somewhat. They encouraged their team to get keys. It was kind of like DLC 4. But I'm just there being like, hey, it would give you so many more points than keys. Just do a challenge. Hey, that's worth as like you could just compete in a rivalry, and that's worth more points than all the keys your team is gonna get as a whole, potentially. But that's supposed to be the point of DLC this time. It was supposed to be about rivalries and all that. So honestly, in retrospect, probably shouldn't have given any points to the people on top. Should have just made it individual, and then we can have the same kind of scoring system that I had for what I did for individual points. Those aren't team points, but I also don't think anyone noticed. I don't think anyone really cared. People didn't care about the points for side leaderboards. They're just kind of there to play. Some people would compete a little bit for like the placings, but I'm really confident people weren't looking at the points when they were thinking about anything for scoring. The only thing that looked like it mattered for scoring, people would tell their teams to get a few more keys here and there, and that was not supposed to be the way that people played this DLC. Keys are supposed to be like, some of the points, but clearly inferior to where the majority of points come from. Something that anybody would be able to do, which is a rivalry challenge. So in that manner, I think DLC was an obvious failure. You know, I couldn't promote it. I couldn't do any of that stuff. I thought that I ended up valuing CC5 over trying to push for a competitive community. That's just what we did, and I think people preferred that. So I'm confident I made the right decision in terms of what I did. But like, honestly, any of these ideas about how to have a different kind of competitive system or points, I'm gonna have to rethink it.
DLC 6, it might be very different. You know, I say that every time, but you know, maybe I should just have it more about the custom than the league. Maybe I should actually make it DCL. You know.
Yeah, I think I made the right call. No reason to go back on it. People like CC5. But I do really wish I could promote a more competitive community for these kinds of events. I do think that the DLC 5 system, 100%, it's just the most sound system that I've made for a DLC yet. Easily the best one. That if anything were to encourage people to be a little more competitive in the Dustforce community, it would have been this. And this didn't work. I really enjoyed the new key system. It was awesome, and I really liked how there was something in between Red 1 and World Record you could chase for. Invert keys were also very fun too. My only feedback is attempting something like combining side leaderboards and invert keys. It felt like side leaderboards were forgotten about, especially since people were more focused on getting keys than they were points. We just talked about just about everything in here. But yeah, side leaderboards, they were originally supposed to be more intertwined with invert keys, and in the future they'll continue to move in that direction, because I do want to expand invert keys to an extent. I do want to have a bigger focus on that kind of stuff. You know, people don't care about the competition, but they care about stuff like achievements, and I want DLC to be a little bit more like that. But I really don't feel like people, they were in it for the points this time around. I did not like the team format. Switching teams every week really lacked the teamwork aspect that I enjoyed. I'd much rather have a single team throughout each week, and that way you can grow as a team and specialize in certain areas. And some people liked it, some people didn't. As talked about, I don't think it was for everybody. You know, there are obviously people that didn't like it. I think that for the few comments that people didn't like the team format, honestly, it's better than having half of DLC just kind of give up halfway through because they didn't like their team for the entire league. Because you don't hear about the people that just leave. They just leave and they don't say anything about it. Even if some people from DLC 5 don't return, which is entirely predictable, you know, we'll still do something fun for DLC 6. We had a similar number of people play the maps this time, because people are active in the community in one way or another. I didn't require that people joined teams this time around. It was always going to be a little divisive, and it was intended to be kind of divisive because it's one team versus another. But that's just that. The specializing in different areas within a team, that's something that I do appreciate about DLC. Can highlight that kind of stuff, and people can contribute in different ways like that. I think there was ample opportunity to do that this time around. But it's always a little bit different. The problem this time had to do more with the it didn't really feel like a competition because people weren't invested in the competition aspect, and no one really bought into the core rivalry and challenges kind of system. So understandably there was no competition because that's where all the points were supposed to come from. So it made all the little ways that people could individually contribute to the team not really stand out, because how they were supposed to contribute was, if you want to compete, you have to do a rivalry or a challenge. You know, I spell it out from the beginning. You know, this is what DLC 5 is about. If you want to do the competition, that's what it's about. But you know, it turned out how it turned out. I already touched on it. It was not supposed to focus on other things the way that past DLCs did. That's fine. We'll return to something a little more traditional next time, probably. So what about DLC 6 ideas? Here are the notes that I've already written down about possible DLC 6 stuff that might happen. I feel like I want to change the weeks up. I've wanted this for a long time. So similar to DLC 5 week 4, I'm thinking about 3 2-week periods where, you know, there's a little bit of a break, and then the maps come out. And then people have a little bit longer than 1 week to play the maps. I do want to reset team scores every week. That way, it's kind of like you are fighting over the week. Think of it like a best of 3. You know, obviously there wouldn't be 2 teams, but imagine with this DLC, if you stayed on the same team, you know, let's just say, for example, it was routing and execution, and those were the 2 teams for DLC 5, and we have 3 weeks, each, you know, week in quotes is a 2-week period, like DLC 5 week 4, and it's a best of 3. All right, you win week 1, all right, you won a week. That's, you know, that's points for the whole competition for that. And then whatever the team points are, they reset. So it doesn't really matter how much you won by, it just matters you won a week. There would also be some kind of comeback mechanic. Week 3 would not, like, you could actually lose the first 2 weeks and probably still have a way to make it back up. You know, just ideas. I'd also really like if old maps scored, or you were able to get keys on them later on. They wouldn't count the same way, but I really like how week 4, this time around, you were able to catch up on old keys, and they still counted to a degree. That's something I've wanted to do. There's not going to be 2 teams next time. It's not going to shuffle around. I don't know what team structure I'm going to do. Maybe I'll do 6 per team. Maybe there are only 3 or 4 teams total. Maybe there are only 2 or 3 per team. I think only having a pair or a trio, you sign up with your pair or trio, I think that'd be pretty cool. You just have a partner. And then, like Survivor, you gotta vote someone off your team of 3 halfway through. I don't tell anyone. And then I combine some teams partway through. You know, there's some really good things you could learn from Survivor like this. But plenty of options. I could do a lot of different things. I just don't know what I'd want to do yet. Whatever I do with DLC 6, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to base everything around that idea. similar to how everything was based around 2 teams and a rivalry system this time around. I care a lot about having the mechanics make sense together. So whatever we do, they'll all go together. I've said I want to expand inverts. I'll rethink side leaderboards in terms of how much they matter, what matters, what's interesting. Maybe put a key on it. That's what inverts were potentially going to be. Put a key on the side leaderboard. Rethink challenges and anything else that requires player initiative. Already discussed. Maps are going to be different. I'm not going to have as many pre-made maps because it's obviously not going to be the next cyber complex. I could have one pre-made map that's longer or harder, or both, each week. I think that's probably the approach that, if I had to predict, we would do. That would probably be like, 40 seconds, not more than a minute of a map. So pretty comparable to, say, just a little bit longer than like Arbs or Simons or Epons level. Maybe not as long as my combined level, but something like that, possibility.
Like long mansion map type length.
Yeah. 40 seconds, 50 seconds, roughly. Is probably where I would think of. I want to do some stuff similar to that we did in Break Week. I want to do unique kinds of challenges like that. Things that people can do that involve other maps. We may involve other maps that are not made during DLC. I want to make people that have not made maps make maps. I was saying earlier that we really didn't have anyone new make maps in DLC this time around, other than me, in fact. I made an Atlas account. So yeah, me, the newest map maker, DLC 5, the only new map maker, DLC 5, by the way. And in an event that really prides itself in its ability to encourage people to make maps, it was a pretty big opportunity missed this time around. We had such large teams, such an ability to encourage different map makers to make maps. But it was about CC5 this time around. Alright, well that took a little longer to talk about the comments than I expected. Well, that's what's up. Do we have any other late responses? No? Alright. Alright, I'm gonna take a break and then I guess I'll talk about some CC5 stuff. That's basically the DLC 5 portion and some stuff about CC5. I was thinking I wasn't gonna spend as much time on DLC, but I ended up reading all the comments. Cause I did all the first part in like 40 minutes. Alright, intermission. BRB for real.
Alright, I'm gonna look at some stuff. Do I have anything I want to show off? I'll get rid of some of the DLC 5 stuff. Alright, well I have a few things that I've gathered from early development. Like images, some ideas. I can show some of them off. Basically, it's like an open Q&A, I guess, and just like any kind of stuff that people might want to talk about related to CC5. No real order to it. I could just, I'm sure I could talk a lot about CC5 and basically anything in it. So if there's anything people want to know about, they should ask. Because I'm not going to go through it all. And I'm willing to, like, I'll probably stream a little bit over the next week or so. And if people want to talk about any of its map design with me, feel free. And I'll bring up any older stuff that's relevant when people ask. So at the beginning, I didn't really know how many people were going to be involved and how big of a compilation it was going to be. So it was a bit of a mystery how big of a level it was going to be, or if it was even going to be Cyber Complex 5. Did I learn any shenanigans from putting this together? Let me see. I learned a lot about map making. This was the most I've used editor by far. I applied plenty of my script knowledge. I don't know if I'd say I learned any script shenanigans. There are a lot of little tricks going on. I was able to get some dust mod updates in there for like hiding sublayers, for instance. I learned how the load distance worked relating to override stream sizes. So for instance, this trigger is about as far away as it can be, while all this stuff is still off screen in order to move this death zone over there. So if you use tools and zoom out, you'll see like there's this box around the player. That's everything that's loaded. Now normally what you see here is what's loaded for entities normally. You can't go any smaller than that. But if you zoom out like this, you will normally see the tiles have a lot larger of a box around the player before it goes to just the gray blocks.
In that case, that's what override stream sizes in the API does. It allows me to have less stuff that's loaded, so less is saved when doing things like checkpoints. DLC 5 does, or CC5 had a lot of effort that went into it to mitigate checkpoint lag. And there were two big things that contributed to this. One was the mentioned override stream sizes. That adds a lot. That improves the lag a lot. And the other one, the more important one, is actually part of the reason why the update exists. And that has to do with music in the levels. That doesn't get loaded and stored the exact same way anymore. Starting with the most recent stable dust mod update. So previously in older dust mod versions, you'd see that there was a lot of checkpoint lag whenever you had embedded music, stuff like that. That's pretty much all gone, thanks to some changes that C's made. So I'm really glad that that happened, because I was almost ready to rewrite the checkpoint system and have a script for checkpoints custom, so that we could kind of bypass the crazy upcoming checkpoint lag. I have that partially written out still. How are map makers decided? It was like a it was primarily like I prioritized asking people that have contributed to things that I've done in the past before, and ones that I knew were most likely to be involved, most likely to be interested in CC5 or a compilation map anyway. So I asked a lot of people if they were working on something, and I tried to get a feel for if there were any projects that were in the works. This is how I learned of the ramen nexus that was in progress at the time. So there were plenty of people that I had a feeling I could just ask and they'd say yes. And I really wanted people that I could rely on them being in the community and able to work on some stuff. You know, able to take it more seriously. So it primarily had to do with me feeling out how the conversations went with any people that I asked if they had stuff going on. And I didn't want to have too big of a group, so I did have to prioritize a little bit in terms of who I asked first. And because basically who I was asking first, they were all saying yes for the most part. You know, they I didn't really have to ask that many other people. The only one that I asked that kind of said no was C, and that was because C was busy in August and September and was doing his own thing. But C contributed by working on dust mod, so I got plenty of C help on CC5. He just didn't make a map directly. CC5 would not have been possible without some of those improvements. So things that required the new dust mod updates, for instance, anything to do with particles. Originally it had to do more with my map, because I wanted to have more dynamic particles. Like if you're on SS pace, I wanted it to show that you're on SS pace, and I wanted the player to have more feedback along those lines. So here's a good area in Epon's level that shows one of the things that's relevant. Alright, so right here, if you look in editor, you'll notice there was a lot more fire in the background. This is one of the partially cut kind of features from CC5. Week 3 originally had a little bit more of a fiery theme to it, where when you hit things, fire would spread. And you only see this in Epon's map. His map's the only one that has these furnaces. And we couldn't use it during week 3 because, well, the dust mod update wasn't out yet. So I really like how they turned out, but I'm a little disappointed that we only did them here in Epon's level. It was just a bit much to ask people to do more detail on their levels in week 3. We were really stretched kind of thin at that point. Arv actually did a lot of the help on Coggers.
Yeah, surprised I somehow ended up on artwork despite despite having very minimal experience with it.
Yeah. But fortunately, after picking the style and all that, it's easy enough to copy like what you already see.
Yeah, I basically looked at what Temp had already done in Game Breaks, and I was like, yeah, let me just basically, like, I didn't literally copy paste stuff, but it was like, yeah, let me use the same theming, like, basically 100% of the way through.
What week 3 does with the gears, that doesn't require dust mod, but the gears kind of replace the particles in terms of like things that flow with you as you're playing the level. So if you notice, the gears are going a little bit slowly right now, but when I super max special, when you do a super, the gears speed up temporarily, and then they slow back down a little bit. When you drop combo, they slow back down to normal. So you do a super, it speeds up temporarily. I'm not going to drop combo this time, so it's not going to slow back down. Where was the trigger?
That's...
Was it over there? Oh, I guess you don't see max super triggers with triggers on. That's kind of strange. Maybe I'll tell C about that one. But basically, if you hit a prism, if you hit a heavy prism, or if you do a super, they add bonuses to the particle effects and the gears, which, you know, the math behind them is exactly the same as the particle effects. They get the same bonuses and all that. And the particle effects that are behind the gears, right here, the prism gears, those are the same kinds of particle effects, so those still react the same. Like, you'll notice by default they're, you know, a little bit inactive. If I hit that one, and then if I do a super, like, you're seeing more particles around each of these. And I'll do another super. I drop combo, you see a lot less particles now. That's what's going on in the particle effects for each of the weeks. That's one of those thing that's going on. Every time I hit a prism, you also see the fire spreads a little bit more on the bottom. There are 3 tiers to the fire. So that's just how that works. Every time you hit one, it goes up a tier. And then it resets. So, but some of them don't use the full tiers. Like over here, you know, it's at like nothing, and then you get just one prism. It doesn't really do much. But if I put another couple prisms in this area, you'll see the fire does spread. So, cool little details like that. That one didn't really get used as much. The prisms getting attached to the gears, that ended up being a post week 3 improvement. That was really cool. It's more evident what's going on in week 4. So you'll see when you're on SS pace, you see all of these particles that are different colors. And I'm talking about these little circles that show up like this green circle. So there's a particle effect for each week in this area. They're all the same type, and there's one for each color for each week. The same thing happens in week 2 with the sparks on the wires. Think of it like you have to get a little experience in your week to build up the effect from your week. So every time you hit a heavy prism, it slowly adds a little bit more of the golden particles. But if you ever drop combo, the music changed. It's no longer the exact same music. And those colored particles are gone, and also the yellow particles, the golden particles, those are back down to a minimum. So CC5 is all about that build-up. We're always building up to the next area. So it feels really good when you are on SS pace and you keep getting that feedback. But you feel it when you drop combo. So that effect, the sublayer hiding, is also that's also required for the CC5. That was like a last minute kind of thing. With my level in particular, this level was supposed to be themed a little bit differently. This was originally going to be a fireworks themed level. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but basically whenever you do anything cool, fireworks are going to go off. Get an apple? Apple firework. You get an apple firework for every apple you hit, by the way. You hit a heavy prism, firework. You do a cool little boost section, you get a sequence of fireworks. That was intended for these sections. This section between levels, fireworks shoot up, rapid fire fireworks. The tower section, fireworks on both sides. It's the big build up, it's the big finale. You hit a prism on that side, firework. Hit a prism on the other side, firework over there. And then of course the ending would be like, something special. You'd hit the first group of prisms, you get a big C firework. Second group of prisms, big C firework. And then finally get the 5. At least we did in the stars. It was simple and cool, but my level unfortunately does not have fireworks because I worked on all the other levels instead. Maybe I will use fireworks in the future, but this was 100% the level for it. I'm kind of disappointed that I couldn't pull it off, but I was able to pivot and make something interesting, kind of virtual themed still. That definitely would have used the particle changes though. In week 1, we have the pipes that go with the entire level. So this it's more evident with Arb's map than the others, because we paid a little bit more attention to it with Arb's map. So you'll see there's this particle effect that follows the pipes. It works exactly the same way as the other ones. When you super, you hit a heavy prism, you get bonuses. The supers are permanent bonuses. You only get so many supers. The first super was nice, it kind of drew attention to the particles. You know, kind of like they're bursting out of the pipe a little, but not exactly. But you kind of didn't really notice it too much. I wanted the particles, the effects to always flow with the player. There's always a careful, I always tried to be very careful about making sure that things flowed with the player, made the level feel more linear. So when it came to sections that were less linear, it was a lot more awkward. And if ever people kind of deviated from that path, it looks a little bit awkward and cluttered. Like when the pipes kind of cross over in various sections in the Camel and Big Diesel section. You know, it's a little bit weird for that, but I like that it's prevalent. I like that we added a little bit of each map into each other. Mostly for week 1, it was just taking ARB stuff and putting in the others. But that's because we had me and Epon working on the art, helping ARB for his level 2, and then Big Diesel was able to do it for the rest of week 1. Alex's level is actually very different than how the pipes ended up turning out here. The background art is very different. Alex always knew that he was going to be responsible for one of the week transitions, so we were very particular about this specific one between weeks 1 and 2. Huggies wasn't exactly as prepared for it and didn't make the transition himself. Just made the gameplay. That was actually one of the last things that was worked on because I was trying to hand it off to other people and I just had to do it myself. So that's another reason for no fireworks, unfortunately. I just had to stop working on my map and had to work on CC5. But that was kind of the theme of my map. But I like how Alex's map combined the themes there. He and Simon also had some fun combining their level. In week 2, you could actually see a lot of the props in week 3, but because of how they were able to just blend into the background, it didn't really matter too much. In fact, Ucky's level originally CC5 wasn't in this order. There were a few different ways that we were thinking about doing it, and it was like we'll probably do it this way, but we're willing to switch it up if it comes to it. So what ended up happening was Big Diesel joined in the group a little bit later than the others, and ended up taking over some of the week 1 kind of art, which before week 1 was a little bit mixed in how effective that was, because he wasn't fully there. Unfortunately, wasn't really able to do as much as we thought either. So Camel ended up moving more into week 1. I have some stuff. Let's see. So I have originally here are a few images that I have for CC5's development. This was one of the first tables that I gave people. Like here, we could make levels about this length, so like 30 to 40 seconds for the longer level per week, maybe a short level in week 4. We could do 3 levels, or we could do 4 levels per week. Like this is the smaller side of things, you know, only looking at like a 4-minute map, and then the longer side was only looking at like a 5-minute map. In terms of, you know, these level lengths, which week 4 ended up being like almost a minute somehow. Temps levels were a little bit longer. Some combining levels were a little bit longer. So ended up being a little over 5 minutes after all. This was one of the original plans for who was gonna do what. Not exactly the order that we were expecting. This was just the map assignment. So we were thinking that Arb might do 2 maps, Alex would do 2 maps, 1 each week, Camel would do one in each week. Ukkies would do 1 and 2 and 3. Simon was gonna do the big map. Temp was gonna do another map. I don't remember what order these images are in. This was the next version of this is what order we think the levels might go in for images. So we knew really early that Arbs was going to be the first map of the group, and we made that pretty clear really early, actually. Like when I got Arb on board, I'm pretty sure we were clear very quickly that his would be first. Big Diesel and Camel were not exactly always planning to be teamed up, but we did obviously end up moving Camel's level from week 3 into Big Diesel's. You'll notice Epon isn't actually on this list. Epon was not originally intending to make a map. He was just willing to help out here and there and make a little music, but I wasn't expecting it to eventually turn into how much Epon ended up doing. Honestly, in total, Epon probably did the second most amount of work on CC5 as a whole. Yeah, and that's if you exclude the music. You know, just on the level itself, I think Epon's probably the second most productive person in the group. So, I'm very thankful for that. That's obviously assuming me at number 1, because I put everything together. I did actually help out a lot on people's maps. So eventually what happened was Temp kind of some stuff happened with Temp's schedule, and he got sick, and we had to adjust some things for week 3. Epon that just ended up lining up for Epon to jump into week 3, and we split Temp's map in half. And that's how we got 2 maps there to replace Camels, and Ukkies ended up being the 2 that worked out here, and we just switched where Camels and Ukkies were in week 2. And Big Diesel couldn't do gameplay for a level, so Camel did his gameplay and Big Diesel did the art for both levels. That's just what worked there.
Things certainly fell into place rather nicely, despite you know, it very easily could not have fallen into place at all. So the way that it worked out was, you know, it was good that things worked out the way they did.
Oh yeah. There was no one had any complaints when it came to here's how we think it could go. But also no one really had any strong suggestions. At one point, we were talking about transitions, and I was trying to get people to come up with interesting transitions for levels, and I was like, here's how you could combine levels. And then I like, you know, here's here's an obvious image. Here, how this level works. Right here, we have red level that ends with a falling section, and then you do something like a super, and it just reveals that you're now in a climbing level. That'd be pretty cool. I actually have a level that demonstrates that. So, this is highlighted a little similarly to the other stuff. You know, you do this, you do a super, then you get super back at some point, you land, do a super, it removes all the tiles, it reveals that you fell into another level. You know, we have a trigger that when you super does stuff. So this would have been a really cool transition to have. Anything like this, I was really hoping to include. Like you could fall into a dark level. This would make for a really good kind of weak transition, where you like end a week and then you're falling into a level, and it's really dark, and when you super, it kind of lights up everything around you. I was very firmly against wanting to do teleport stuff. I really wanted the levels to connect in interesting ways. So, you know, this is something that was close to what we ended up doing. On the side, we have other kinds of things. So I have a little crisscross kind of loop around level. This is basically, this is not exactly how Temp and Uki's levels connect, but you know, kind of is. Basically, you have red level that goes this way. You have purple section, which purple could be a part of either red or green's levels. But you have this prism structure in the middle that would respawn. And basically you just have the levels just intersect, and that'd be kind of neat. We ended up doing it with, you know, in Aki's level, you fall through a section that's in Temp's level, and, you know, no one expected that. Like, no one saw the shared geometry in both levels and are like, I recognize that small prism.
You know,
It
if you
was,
rotate this image 90 degrees clockwise, it's actually pretty close to the general flow there.
yeah, it's very well hidden. You would not expect that to combine that way. But I'm glad that that worked out. We have a more complicated version of like a multi-loop structure, where imagine you have red level and then you go to green level, then you do the same super, it respawns, then you open up a path to blue level, then you do the same super, then you like fall into the next area. You know, that'd be pretty neat if we did that. That's kind of like what is on my screen here, where I just kind of showed, you know, you kind of like you do something and then maybe the clouds kind of go away. We can do effects like that. That'd be pretty cool. Other things that I have gathered. I have an early video from Simon's section. If anyone wants to see this.
The prototype maps.
This was, I don't have any other videos ready for this, but we have a handful of these out there. So Simon's level obviously went through some changes, but there are some things that he wanted to be in the level from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think I ever recorded like gameplay for the old versions of Protostatic, so
We do have all the old files at least.
it's true. I did upload nearly every set of changes.
Yeah, we were good about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's already is, you know, you can already see the parts of this that remained in the release version of Nazara. Despite it being overall pretty different, you can see how it all just evolved from this early version.
We also gathered three images of people that were either onto us or not onto us.
Yeah, these were a good laugh.
When CC3 was the daily chaotic enigma, claimed that we're not really on schedule to get CC5 yet, but we were in fact barely on schedule.
I believe this was what 2 weeks? Like I think this was in the middle of week 2, right?
It was like
that
break
happened.
week, I think. Glass on Epon's level. This was posted a couple times. This one was told in the V Ceiling channel to Epon. Jake DM'd Temp. So, people were almost onto us. What else do I have? Here's an example. I turned a past DLC practice map into an example for the week 3 theme. There's some gears in the background, littered with more than just gears. Some chain stuff. The same kind of tile layer 16, 17 kind of stuff going on here. You can see some gears in here as well. I did the same thing for another map. I don't have the file for that one handy, but I have a version of Alex's CC3 map Fracture that uses the texture script. Fracture. Then it won't load immediately. But either way, the texture would show up. It coincidentally, coincidentally in quotes, would show up on these tiles. I would have to save it to load the image. I don't really want to save over the file. Here's an older version of my level. You can see a remnant of the fireworks script. When you hit a prism, it'll do some stuff over there. So it lights up the backs of trees when you do certain things. When you like enter a trigger or do stuff like that. This is just a general script testing area for me. You go in here and it moves this stuff. So, presumably this would show that you could move this group of objects into a level from outside the level. Let's say you clear an area and then you go back through it later. You want to add some of that stuff back in. Alright, well, when you reach this trigger, it moves this chunk of stuff back into the level. Just me doing simple stuff like that. I wrote out the sublayers for what the trees. They have multiple sublayers for each one. There are the leaves in front, and then there are the back leaves behind each one. So in the correct fog trigger, you'll see that it looks a little bit more normal. It kind of lights up when you do things. That's how the fireworks is supposed to illuminate the area. The fog in the background is just kind of there to demonstrate some stuff I was messing around with anyway. But this was This file is from early August, so I had this for a while. This level also, you know, this being from early August didn't actually see many changes. It has some temporary dust blocks in places for supers, because I was just like, we'll super here. I put a landing platform there for the ending. I added an extra super here because I thought people would probably appreciate another super. Might as well have another one. I lengthened the tower level. Once I knew I was going to split the levels, I was like, I kind of want tower to be a little bit longer. You know, I don't really have to worry about this being only one level anymore. I can just make tower a little longer. This used to be a little bit different. There used to be a dust block in the middle here and another thing to jump into. So this used to be far more kid favored than it arguably is right now. This climb, this saw some big changes. Used to be quite different. I didn't really care for how this section worked out early. I knew I was going to change it. This section didn't see too much changing. I always knew I wanted fireworks here. I always knew I needed to change this, but I just needed to come up with something. I eventually did. The climb itself in tower didn't really change much. I don't remember why exactly I switched this from dust blocks to normal tiles, but I think it was fine to do that. I just, you know, creates dust spread, which is questionable. Add another prism there, lengthen this. We got a lot of the old files. I only have these ones on my computer right here. If you guys are curious about any of the sections, I can show off what I have or describe stuff. This is I don't know, I don't really have specific things to say. If I did, it'd be hard to just pick one. There's just a lot going on. There really is just detail everywhere in the level. You know, everything in the level kind of has its own reason behind it, and that's for the entire level. There are plenty of differences between CC5 and the original versions, not just in art and effects. Occasional improvements. Dust count changes, thanks to blocks everywhere. But considering that the level was put together kind of late, I lacked a little bit of the polish that I really wanted to get from it early. There were plenty of surprises and challenges that were associated with merging too. So I was talking about how Uki's level. It was unexpected that Uki's decided to go down and left in his week 3 level. We weren't expecting that. In fact, it used to be longer and go farther left and would have gone into Camel's level. You would have seen that be the case.
if it went any more. So I made it a point to shorten the ending of his level, you know, less boosting at the end to the left. Originally this section right here, this wasn't this. It used to just be a drop onto this, pretty much. And then we came up with the idea to actually combine the level attempts this way, make a loop.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying something about it being pretty similar to the start of Server Room, at least at some point during its development. I assume it was a very early version of the map.
Yeah, I was, when I talked about it with Uckies, I was like, just make this section not take up too much space side to side, and we can actually put it right here in Temp's level, because Temp's level is basically already ready, and Uckies hadn't done his level yet, and then Uckies hadn't really, or had just given his first drafts of his level, and I was like, this kind of goes down and left. That's something to work with. You know, we'll have to do something about that, I guess. I don't know how we'll put this into Epon's or Temp's level. At the time, we were just like, week 3 could have gone in any order, because we already had to change a few things with like Camel moving into week 1 with Big Diesel. But Uckies' level was going to be here, and Temp's level was going to be before mine. But then we added Epon, and we're like, it'd be nice to have more cool transitions. So I'm just trying to force somebody to do something cool with a transition. And then I realized that I could put this here. So we ended up doing it. And Uckies was like, I can use that slope too. I'm like, yeah, go for it. Like, you'll have the same prism. I'm gonna put this prism here, and hopefully that's pretty close to where it is in Temp's level. And it was really close. It was only a few units off when you combine them. Then he just made it go around a little bit more, which is better than just, you know, server room through here. I was like,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
don't make this any shorter. You can't go any to the right. You can go to the left a little, but here are your boundaries. This is your space you can play with. So Uckies was the level that had to pay attention to that the most, because it just had to fit. We didn't know what we were gonna do for an actual transition here for a while. I knew I needed some kind of way to go from the texture to not using the texture. So oh, I think the texture script's over here. Because you turn it on really early. Alright, that one turns it off. This one. So I hard-coded in the texture script exactly where to end it. So it stops drawing it on this line pretty much. So I aligned the texture script to only draw up to that point. Otherwise it would draw past this tile, which you can see with this fog trigger. I guess not that one. You can see with one of these fog triggers that it's just a different tile. but the transition worked out. One of the last things that was made in the project. Another compilation map. That was not the plan. I will not be doing that, at least.
It would be significantly shorter for what it's worth, considering all the non-CC maps are just the short key maps.
Yeah, and the order of them is a little bit tricky to do, I think.
Yeah.
They didn't have the same constraints. Like, how are you gonna put Equilub in there?
I don't know. Probably just, actually, I'm trying to think of how these wrap around, right? Because
Dot execute starts in the middle of something. Routing factory, the ending doesn't really make sense. So, not for me, I'll just say. Plus, they work with some scripts that are kind of hard to work with each other. You really got to do it the way that I did it in CC5. The themes are just so different. That'd be really hard to combine CC5 with the other CC maps. Unless you combine the other maps into CC5. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, suffice to say, we won't be getting the legendary Cyber Complex anytime soon.
We could though. We just have to start with CC5. It's just the most complex. What else is there to talk about? I didn't really have any questions for anybody. Everybody just understands CC5.
Yeah.
My map definitely got kind of shafted. I thought it was kind of funny with like, I always knew that my map was, by being the only week 4 map, the one that releases with CC5, it was just gonna get kind of ignored.
Yeah, I felt like I mean, I felt that during the week, like, really hard, because it's like, especially with grinding the maps for IL, right? Because, like, specifically on Prismism, as you had been saying, the map could be pushed really, really far for like time-wise, and I think in any other week it would have been, but because CC5 was, this monolith that people wanted to play, then basically every other map got like, not ignored, but completely sidelined.
Yeah.
And there really wasn't a good way to handle that outside of legit just adding another week just for CC, and like that would have just made the entire event too long. And of course, releasing CC at the end of the week would make 0 sense. So, it just kind of is how that worked out.
It made sense in planning to release the final section at the same time as CC5 and make it obviously like this is a CC5 map. It was the only map that we could do that with, because like, what are you gonna do when you have a level that has very clear design philosophy based on Cyber Complex?
Actually, I mean, yeah, we had to like on that topic, right? We had to change some parts of my map early on because it was just too much of a giveaway that, oh yeah, this is going to be a map in CC at some point.
Yeah, it's just stuff like the supers primarily. But when we split up my map,
I ended up taking out some of that stuff anyway. And the ending section, yeah, that's CC5 specific anyway.
Yeah. Gonna have that classic, just ending boost section.
But I did think it was funny that, it was enjoyable at least to watch some people, their first experiences of week 4 would be like, they're playing CC5.
Doing CC5, yeah.
And
Yep.
they just come to week 4 and they're like, whoa, that's cool. And, you know, all of a sudden they have to be playing this level they haven't played before. And fortunately, in general, they would do well. But then they would never practice week 4. They would never play the week 4 levels to practice them. I mean, not everybody. And
Yeah, but it's a general trend, yeah.
yeah, in general, you know, some people would just be like, well, you know, I've already played all these other levels, and I gotta play CC5, but I'm just not practiced at this final area.
Yeah.
So, in
mean,
terms of releasing a
particularly with-
compilation again, I'd do it differently that way.
Yeah. Especially with the option to just like editor into week 4. You know, it was less incentive to play the week 4 maps if you were only going for CC5.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because they really are good on like standing on their own. Why wouldn't you try to SS a map where you have to improvise 6 minutes in? True.
Yeah, we did all that build up just to have another minute map at the end of it. What if you played all the levels again, but then there was a new minute of content at the end of it?
The true DLC was the ending of CC5 all along.
But I do like to see. It's always enjoyable to see people be nervous while playing and streaming when they get to the end. That's the most exciting kind of content, I guess. You know, you're nervous for the players. You can see the nerves kind of set in.
I very consciously had to slow down, less so on Prism, but definitely on Tower. Like I had to nerf a lot of approaches, just so I could barely hit red 1, and it was just nerves were a huge factor in why that took so long to get.
On the plus side, they were made to not be very difficult, so
Yeah, that's
that
very
worked
true.
out well.
I mean, difficulty or not, like
Apple Run dying in
when
tower.
when your fingers may as well be made of spaghetti at you know as you're going up tower. Eh. Mm.
But I think considering, even considering that, still being tied for favorite section is pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I think they would have like honestly scored better if like people had played them more prior to week 4. But you know,
Maybe.
release order, you know, kind of did not help that, unfortunately.
Simon, did you see the poll results for people liking sections and stuff? I do also have the ugly version of the poll results, the spreadsheet edition. You didn't. All right. Well, here's the ugly version. You can see all the numbers here. This combines everything and has the average gameplay rating of levels, which again, for all of these numbers, consider the small sample size. And just kind of enjoy some of the differences that you might notice. So Epon's level had the highest gameplay rating. It's also worth noting that all these gameplay ratings, on average, are way higher than any other DLC that we've done this kind of
Yeah,
scoring
true.
for.
Like, you
Like,
usually have
you don't see any over 4, usually. Only
right.
like a
I
few
mean,
are over 4.
I think we've had like one or two that were like high threes,
Yeah.
and then like nothing, like maybe 1/4 or something. So
Yeah, so just judging by that alone, easily the highest quality DLC 5 maps. Um, we had some aesthetic fans for Nazara Synthesis, as well for my levels and ARPS. People voted yours as the hardest section, Simon. Yours tied for 4th on favorite segment. Me and Arb tied for 1st. Epon, Simon, and Camel Big Diesel are all kind of in the next tier, and Alex and Temp. No votes for Lucky's or Electro Tangle. Electro Tangle was just kind of that, not really part of any other section. Part. It was the only one that was actually separated from anything else. Your map's in the top half of team maps. 3.5, yeah. It is 4th.
I mean, really, in the grand scheme of DLC, yeah, 3.5 is pretty damn high.
No 2s.
Yeah, that's good. As a former recipient of a map that I forget if Sarah Please was like a 1, like a high 1 or a low 2, but you know, it was we have a pretty wide, we've had a pretty
Yeah.
wide range of quality in previous DLCs, so
Those
it's
kinds
good
of
to see
levels
that.
like that and Isosceles always get scored really low.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring it up earlier, but like, there's definitely a breaking point where like open routing maps get too open and people start really disliking them. So
Yeah.
yeah, um,
If you look at the actual data that I have, so for each week for the scoring, so there are a handful of ones that were brought up. No one's week 1. We had 1 for Equilove. Someone gave Epon's level 1. Totally undeserved.
absolutely. I don't know. Very strange.
But, like, this is why I say you can't really trust them that well, because for each of these ones, there's like some random 5 also. So I wouldn't care too much about the point value, the average value. It's just a small sample size, and people just do whatever on them. So I don't take those seriously. Yeah, I don't have those as easy to show off. What else is there? I mean, that's kind of it. We didn't really have any other CC5 questions.
No other Dust Wars streamers.
AVC was on earlier playing some more Revenge. But that was a few hours ago.
Yeah. Alright, well, that's pretty much it for this stream. I think, there'll be a new announcement in the near future. We got another Dust mod update in the near future too. Featuring things like the NPC section now has NPCs again.
Ah,
So,
nice. This was fixed.
yeah, it's on dev. We're just waiting to push it to stable. Nexuses are secretly broken unless you're on that version, by the way.
Oh, is it actually just like not specific to the CC5 Nexus?
Yeah, so what is actually happening, if any of you are curious, so anyone that hasn't updated to dev in the last few days, if you go to any community nexuses with scripts in them, you'll probably notice that there's no longer a script attached to that nexus. And that's because, you know, there's a little bug. There's something removing Nexus scripts. So, Nexuses aren't working at the moment until you update to the dev version or the next stable version. So anyone that's attempted to play something like Toxic Runoff in the last month actually has not been able to get past Fairy Glen. Because the levers won't show up anymore, stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, scripts they're not attached after you enter a level.
Yeah, I noticed that the scripts were gone in the CC5 Nexus, but I didn't think that it was not specific.
Yeah, the stars didn't show up, so like you'd use the tome and then you'd re-enter this and it would return. There's a DLC 5 Nexus 2 as well,
Interesting.
featuring an additional fix. Both included on the both in Dust mod, but you know, it really just took us to have two nexuses next to each other, both requiring scripts for us to really be like, you know what, this doesn't work. And DLC 5's nexus just straight up required some teleporting action. You know, you'd enter a level and then can't teleport anymore. But that works now, so we're all good. Now you can back Nexus and the stars show up again. Or at least if you're on dev. But like I said, it'll go to stable sometime soon. I'm gonna make an announcement when we have that up, because I was gonna make an announcement anyway about future events. So one day there will be an announcement. Probably within a week, if I had to guess. And I'll tease the next upcoming events, which you can expect another showcase, as I've stated already, a less abrupt showcase featuring some stuff from other events, probably like BRB, LSD maybe. I have to find some map makers, particularly if we do an LSD kind of one. I need to find some map makers that are willing to make an LSD map that are okay with not playing their LSD map, which is a little bit harder to ask than for a BRB. But we might do it, we might not. Depends on if map makers are interested. We're gonna do another best of 2023 thing, you know, another best of year. Best of current year. I'll probably manage it the same way that 2022 happened, so I will somewhat soon be looking for people to get involved with that. There'll be a map competition that has been advertised all year, in fact, relating to the best of 2023. And I've mentioned it a handful of times, but hopefully it takes a little bit more of the center stage now, because that is the main thing remaining for the year. You know, the showcase leads up into that. Right now, there's some candidates for best of 2023. We just had some pretty good DLC maps, for instance. But maybe there are others in the works, and hopefully there are. So, I hope some people are working on stuff. And if they're working on a Nexus, then it'll be cool to do something for that, if we can. Alright, I've successfully stalled for long enough to see. No Dust War streams pop up